Good afternoon, everybody, and congratulations, scholars. I'm delighted to speak to you, and on this, I presume, is a very happy day for you all. And I'm delighted that Charlie mentioned games. Yes, Pong, there you are. Because I'm from the games industry, and I want to talk a little bit about how I got into games, how I think games are a good thing, and why games go beyond entertainment. In fact, it was Mark Zuckerberg's interest in playing games that wanted on to learn how to program, and which in turn, of course, was the result and was Facebook. So let's take you on a little journey. We interact with, we learn through play. We're naturally playful by nature, and as we get older, we enjoy play and solving puzzles. And when we attach rules to puzzles, they become games. I joined the games industry not long after chess was invented in 643 AD, and started a company called Games Workshop. The really handsome guy on this side, that's me, back in 1975. I started a company called Games Workshop and launched Dungeons & Dragons in Europe. What grabbed me about Dungeons & Dragons, that it was a role-playing game, a game of conversation, of theatre on the fly, and it's very creative in many aspects. People used to create their own dungeons and create their own adventures, and a narrative formed around that. And that role-playing thing really got me thinking about things in the future, subliminally. We went over to the States. We met the creators of Dungeons & Dragons. This side was Fritz Lieber, science fiction author. Next to him, Gary Gygax, who invented D&D. Then Professor Barker. Then there's me holding the boxes. Steve Jackson in front, my business partner. The worrying thing about this photograph is that the first three guys to the right of me are dead, and I'm next in line. That's a bit of a worry. We also got to meet Miss Wisconsin, 1976. I don't know what she's doing, but I'm here today in London, and I wish her all the best. So we came back and started selling Dungeons & Dragons. We ended up having to live in a van for 3 months because the business community didn't understand the investment opportunities in the games industry. I can understand why. You go to a bank manager and say, I've got this great game, it's a role-playing game, you're a wizard and a hero going these fantastic adventures, and you kill monsters, it lasts about 4 weeks, and he looks at you rather like an Alsatian watching television and kind of ushers you out of the door. But nevertheless, we opened our very first shop in Hammersmith in West London. It's very primitive looking now. I'm hoping to reenact a sort of Abbey Road reunion photo one day. So if any of you are in that queue, please step forward. I've tracked down 2 people so far. Of course, Games Workshop's matured and moved on. It's now a publicly quoted company. I'm no longer associated with it. But if you drive past the original Games Workshop in Hammersmith, you'll see now it's now a Bosnia-Herzegovina Community Advice Center. But no need to worry, because Workshop's doing very well, 300 stores, etc., Warhammer, own IP. But the essence of role-playing, Steve and I wanted to take to a much wider audience. And I think this is quite important in many ways. We created what was called the interactive book concept. These were books where normally are passive, where you're reading about somebody else's adventures. An interactive book is where the reader becomes the hero and makes all the choices in that book. So the books are broken down into a narrative of 400 paragraphs, and at the end of each paragraph there's a decision point with a turn left, turn right, and when you come across the monsters, you fight the monsters. And this got really a whole generation of children reading back in the 80s, reluctant readers, and inspired creative writing, because it empowered the children and it got them to learn to love reading, because it was all about them rather than passively reading about somebody else's adventures. So it was, in effect, a sort of gamification of literature at the time. 17 million copies sold, over 32 languages. So you'd think this was a great success story. But no, the media at the time really rallied against fighting fantasy game books. The Evangelical Alliance published an 8-page warning guide about the books, saying that because children were interacting with ghouls and wights and gargoyles, etc., that they'd be possessed by the devil. A worried housewife in deepest suburbia said that having read one of my books, her son levitated on radio. The local vicar of Penguin Books threatened to chain himself to Penguin Books building until our books were taken out of publication. Clearly, I'd like to thank them all for their publicity, without whom we wouldn't have been so successful. But really, it's how people are so concerned that if children are having a good time, in that somehow they can't be learning. And that stayed with me for the years to where we are today. In fact, history's not been very kind to games at all. Scientific American rallied against games back in 1859, saying basically you're kind of rotting your brain by playing games like chess. And when it comes to video games, I mean, the media goes into an apoplectic frenzy every time a new game is published. And it's those who comment who usually never played a game. If you'd never seen a film before and you went to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre and asked to write a critique of the film industry, it was likely to be quite negative. And yet, only 5% of games are 18 rated. 95% of games, like Pong, are family friendly. But the problem is, Grand Theft Auto, it's got 18 rated. It's a great British success story. $1 billion was generated in the first week of sales. And it's a pastiche of American society, and it's meant to be played by adults. And we kind of confuse what games are for adults and what games are for children. And the negativity in the press that exists sends out a really negative message to parents and guardians about games in general. They don't see it as a career choice. The investors don't see it as an investment opportunity. And that's really a great chance lost because we are a very creative nation. And we're very good at high technology. And the fusion of those two is one of the outputs of that is games. We don't talk about violence in Angry Birds. You know, the poor old piggies having things thrown at them all day. You know, they survive okay. But we're living in the planet of the apps. You know, there's $50 billion of revenue per annum in the games industry today. It's going to rise to $90 billion by 2017. You know, games have moved from a niche to a mainstream audience. Young children play, young people play. Old people like me still play games. Everyone's still playing games. It's good to say. And I would say games are actually good for you. If you could just park your prejudice against one or two titles and think about the cognitive process of what's going on. Games are social. Games are cultural. BAFTA recognizes the art form. They're motivational, whether it's burning off calories, or playing the Wii, or rehabilitation for people with injuries or old people. They're a good thing. Games can be used in a contextual sense for teaching mathematics, for example. And it goes beyond entertainment in terms of training pilots and surgeons. Game simulation software is used widespread. When you're playing a game, you're learning intuitively. You're learning by trial and error. No one's teaching you anything in particular. You're figuring it out for yourself. So it's a case of hands-on, minds-on, which sits very well with the computer science, which I'll get to eventually, I promise. And when you're playing a game, even like Angry Birds, you are solving problems in learning a little bit about physics and how to overcome the problem of the game. Games are very creative. Minecraft, if any of you have children, you've probably seen how enamored they are when they're playing a game like Minecraft because it inspires creativity. It's a gateway towards creating their own content. It's effectively digital Lego. They're building using their own building tools, their construction, and they're sharing these worlds with their friends. And it really is incredible the stories they write about the worlds they've created, because the narrative is based on their own experience rather than narrative based on something that they've had learnt about by rote or just being told about. So games, I would say, are good because they're problem-solving, planning, motivation, intuitive learning, trial and error, community, collaboration, logic, of course, and risk-taking and teamwork. So we can play games, but how do we actually make games? Well, we are perhaps arguably the most creative nation in the world. Look at our film, our fashion, our music, our advertising, our design, our architecture, our publishing, and of course, our games industry. And using games, because that's all I know about really, is some of the most famous blockbusters in the world are being created in the UK. And there are currently 400 indie studios based in the UK. And yet at the same time, the UK video games industry slipped down from 3rd to 6th in the World Development League of content. Now, there are a number of factors, access to finance being one, digital intellectual property issues, and ability to raise project finance. But one of the major issues was skills. And our industry suffered from a lack of computer programmers of a high enough quality. And I was chair of Computer for Creative Skill Sets, Computer Games Skills Council for 7 years, and we'd mapped out all the universities that had the word games in the title and found that only 10 were actually fit for purpose. A lot of these courses were media study courses masquerading as games courses, and the students were signing up for a course that wasn't really fit for purpose. What we needed was people with hard skills coming out of these courses who could either computer programmers, artists and animators, or some very skilled designers. And we're coming out with these generalists who thought they were going to get jobs, and they quite simply weren't. So I whinged to Ed Vaser, the culture minister, about this, who's been a great supporter of the creative industries and the games industry in particular. And he tasked Alex Hope and I to conduct a review. This review, which you can download from Nesta, called Next Gen, I wrote with Alex Hope with great help from Nesta, who gave us 2 full-time researchers and also funded it. And we looked at the whole talent pipeline and realized it wasn't just about the games industry or the visual effects industry, where Alex comes from, all the creative industries. And it wasn't just about the consumption of technology, it was really all about the creativity that is lacking to enable our naturally creative nation to give them the digital skills so they can create content. And I said it wasn't just about games. Any car has got this Chevy Volt's got over 10 million lines of code embedded within it. So we started off at looking at universities. Why was there a 10% year-on-year drop-off of students applying to study computer science at student universities like Cambridge and elsewhere? Why were there just so few computer science A-levels being taken? And we realized the problem really lay in schools. Now, ICT has had a bit of a bad reputation for probably about 30 years, I guess. And it was very narrow in its approach. It was a strange hybrid of office skills. We were boring kids to death by requiring them to learn Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. They were consuming tech but had given no insight how to create their own technology. You could actually get an A-level in ICT without having ever gone anywhere near a computer, it seemed to me, in any sort of creative sense. Now, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Digital literacy and competency is quite crucial, but that should be the starting point. Kids don't need to spend a year learning Excel. They can learn that in a week. They're digital natives. So what is this kind of education for? Well, Richard Riley, great advisor under Clinton, said education should prepare young people for jobs that do not yet exist, using technologies that have not yet been invented to solve problems of which we are not aware. Basically, to Bill's point, is that we need to create great problem solvers and computational thinkers. So our number 1 recommendation in Next Gen was to put computer science on the school's national curriculum as an essential discipline. I don't need to explain to you guys what computer science is. You know it already. Bill has explained what it is. It's a discipline. It goes beyond code. It's this computational thinking and problem solving and solving problems for things that the children even don't know what kind of jobs they're going to be in. And it's not just about coding. I mean, there's a great example of the diving bell and the butterfly, how the code with the poor chap, Barbie, with his locked-in syndrome, wrote a book by blinking, and the lady who was jotting down the number of blinks which related to a letter, they optimized the alphabet so they could create a code between them so they could write this whole book. And that's, there are so many different applications of coding beyond computing. Having said that, BBC Micro was a cornerstone of computing in schools back in the 1980s. This was nothing new, and in the home everyone had a specky and were doing it for themselves. Suddenly that all got locked down as children weren't allowed to access the open web for fear of doing something terrible or some virus was going to appear on the systems. We suddenly had the software presented to them, so they just became sort of passive consumers. So we made 20 main recommendations, a ripple of applause from our own industries. Was it going to become another dust collector? Well, no. Being a stubborn northerner, we decided to set up a coalition of companies, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, of course, BCS and CAS joined. And we wanted to talk to government with one voice. Next Gen Skills Coalition was funded by UKI, which is the trade association for games. And through various means, we managed to get Eric Schmidt to reference Next Gen in his MacTaggart lecture in 2011, saying he was flabbergasted to learn that computer science isn't even taught as standards in UK schools. And of course, if Eric said it, it must be true. And a month later in Tech City, the Prime Minister echoed his words. And that suddenly gave us access to meet Michael Gove's special advisors, and once you got beyond the civil servants of DFE, suddenly the penny dropped that we were effectively teaching kids how to read but not how to write through the narrowness of the existing ICT curriculum. And not all was the most loved character in DFE, but Michael Gove really should be congratulated for his disapplying the old ICT curriculum and creating the new curriculum from this September, which could be transformational for this country. It could be the envy of the world. All the other countries where it's not mandatory yet are looking on with a lot of interest and perhaps a lot of envy. And we're very good at doing these things after the back, but we've got to make sure that we don't mess it up this time, that we end up owning some of the IP that we've created. And so often is the case that we create something, but the IP resides overseas as we trade it away for project finance, or it just kind of dribbles through our hands. So this is a fantastic and timely initiative to put computer science on the curriculum, because you just think about what happens in every digital minute as we become exponentially more reliant on technology. How are we going to create the next Googles, Facebooks, Twitters, etc. in this country? How are we going to teach the children? Well, you all know now because you've spent how long learning how to do it. But I come from a more anarchic background, so you have to think, in my mind, is that how do children operate? Now, all those children who have been born into the internet, who are called as digital natives, they share everything in their lives, from their privacy, their ideas, everything is shared between them. And they have no problems with that. They like helping each other, they like just keeping in contact with each other. And if there was a survey conducted at the end of last year, the most wanted things on a child's Christmas gift list, 2,000 children aged 8 to 14, iPad and iPhone, way outnumbered everything else. So these are the facts. We can't buck this trend. So we have to work with the facts and with the children to make a curriculum that is relevant and useful to them. And children being bombarded by data. Theirs is a four-screen world as they multitask their way through this digital world in which they find themselves. And yet a lot of their learning is out of tune, I would say, in the way children behave naturally. Albert Einstein said the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. And you can't retrofit an old education format with this particular subject. There's no hope if you're going to try and rote learn computer science. Now, what Computer School are doing is fantastic, and I don't need to talk about that. It's full steam ahead. I've been privileged and delighted to work with British Computer Society and Computing at School. What they're doing is being centres of excellence and spreading the word and being local centres of excellence to enable other teachers to learn this craft is fantastic, and long may it continue. But where it isn't happening, how are we going to do it? Now, we can't afford not to do it. So no matter what school you're in, there's always going to be some kid who knows more about it than you do. So what I would ask, if not to you guys, because you're all trained now, but for those who aren't trained, just say to the class, who knows more about this than me? Me, sir? Okay, you stand up front and you can take charge of the class. I will be a facilitator as a teacher, and we will work collaboratively in groups to further our knowledge beyond the four walls of the classroom and hack our knowledge and hack our wisdom and learn to do this together. What we have to do is to get kids to do stuff. Like Mozilla was saying, make things do stuff, whether it's make an app, build a web page, make a game, or do something 3D robotics, get them excited about to create stuff. And there's loads of informal learning resources out there. And these are good for you as well to get some of your learnings from some of the great things that happen with Young Rewide State and Code Club and Coder Dojo, etc. And Raspberry Pi, let's use those in class. For £15 million, we could give every child in the country a Raspberry Pi. Now, here's a fantastic little computer with 256 meg of RAM. It plays video like an iPhone 4. It's got a Linux operating system. And of course, some would be hit with a hammer, thrown in the river, sold on eBay, but I would say the net benefit would far outweigh the cost in giving one to every child in the country. And we welcome STEM, of course, but let's not forget that art is also inclusive and so vital for the digital world we find ourselves. It's that magic of art and science come together. That's, whether it's making a car or designing an iPhone or making a game, I'd say the STEAM age is more important than the STEM age. So let's accept that education is not just learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And for my mind, this is how a classroom would exist in my learning. So get the kids doing it together in their language, sharing, collaborating. As Ken Robinson says, collaboration is not cheating, it's how we work in the workplace. Why should children be isolated and not collaborating? We are all different, doing it in their language, in their own time, in their own classroom, I think has been proven to have a 30% increase in productivity. And let's be happy to see kids enjoying themselves. Let them do some of the fun stuff they do outside of school, in school. Just because it's fun doesn't mean to say it's trivial. Learning should be a pleasant experience. Toby Young wrote a rather scathing comment about my ideas in the Spectator, and he said I should forget about games-based learning and make Latin compulsory, and cited Mark Zuckerberg's reason for building Facebook is that he learned Latin at school, which he did. But what Toby forgot to say is that Mark Zuckerberg also studied computer science at university, which might have had a greater bearing on Facebook than Latin. So code enables creativity, and I would argue that computer science is the new Latin because it underpins everything in the digital world. It's an umbrella brand for everything where the kids have to be. So children to be able to understand and operate in the world, not everybody's going to become a computer scientist, not everyone's going to become a programmer, yet same basis, not everyone's going to become a physicist or a chemist, but children have to understand how to operate and understand the value of code in the world that they exist. So my last worry is testing. There sort of seems to be so much more appetite for testing. I'm not sure why. God forbid coding is a written test, or computer science is a written test. You would just see the color draining out of children's minds, having been so inspired by creativity and the way that Bill was saying, how you motivate kids to think computationally and do creativity in their learnings. They'd be tested in written tests solely. You know, who invented the World Wide Web? Frankly, that's interesting for a quiz night. But I'll show me your code and I can give you a job, basically. I heard a horror story that the only coding that might happen in an exam at best would be design a currency converter, but then also provide 10,000 words of documentation to support that. Let's not do that. This is a really important thing to inspire children creatively to deal in the digital world. And let's celebrate difference. We are all different. You know, if the test tomorrow had been to pull down the tree, of course the elephant wins. Together we can do great stuff. Let's not be tested against the same metrics, on the same subjects at a sort of random moment in time to value academia over vocational skills. So in summary, I'd just like to say this is a fantastic opportunity for everybody, for men and women, children of the most disadvantaged background. Any of them could become the next Mark Zuckerberg. So what we have to do with computational thinking is to create these inquiring minds, these problem solvers, these self-learners who collaborate. They're great communicators because good problem-solving skills and great communication skills are skills for life. And that they are real risk takers and not being punished for making mistakes, because we all make mistakes, but that's how we get our learning. And who knows, we might create the next Mark Zuckerberg in this country. Thank you.